Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're continuing our series on the let them theory. Join us as we discuss how to handle the big and small stressors in our lives. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're continuing our once-a-month series about the book Let Them by Mel Robbins. It's a New York Times bestseller, and this book was written to help give people the tools to create a better life and better relationships. Once a month, we're reading a chapter or two and discussing how to put this theory into practice in our real lives. And we'd love to have you join us because, as with all our book series, you do not have to be reading the book to enjoy this episode. In fact, Mindy and Julie and I, we just read the book basically to get a springboard for our discussion. So you can jump in at any time. So I really had to refresh my memory on what the let them theory was. Like, we just started the book last month. So I actually went and looked up a summary, but before I read the summary, for anyone that hasn't read the book, did either of you guys have a summary that you kind of refreshed your mind with?
Just let other people be who they are, and then you can't control them. All you can control is your response, your words, your actions, your behaviors. And that comes, the second part of let them is let me.
Right.
You have to have both, or you'll be very lonely.
I had a nice little refresher course with just the pictures at the end of the second chapter, I believe, where she kind of draws out what it looks like visually to let them and then let me. It was kind of a nice catalyst to jump in then to what we're going to talk about today.
When I Googled little summary of let them theory, this is what AI put out. Let them theory is a step-by-step guide on how to stop letting other people's opinions, drama, and judgment impact your life. So I think that's also true. We are so consumed sometimes with what other people are doing and what other people think of us. And this is kind of a attempt to stop letting that control us because we let it control us more than we think we do.
Right. It's easy to put the ownership on other people and become very reactionary and then feeling like it's everybody else's fault. When in all reality, it's your fault. You are able to, I love how we're going to talk about take a pause, take a break, and then realize, okay, how am I going to view this? How much time am I going to give it? How do I feel about it? And then you get to respond. And so it's kind of like a taking the reins back. People will still be people, but you still have a choice.
Well, and culturally, that's kind of the way things have been going the last 5 or so, 10 years, is that everything is somebody else's fault. And that's triggering me. And so you need to go away, instead of your response to that, it's always somebody else's fault. And I hadn't really thought about that before, but that's really true. It's very much opposite. What she's saying to do is very much in opposition to that.
So basically, chapters 1 and 2 that we covered last month was basically what is let them theory, how she came up with it. And then also, as Julie mentioned, the second chapter was let me. And I think today in chapters 3 and 4, the ones we're going to discuss, she really dives deeper into let me. Exactly what does let me mean? Julie, do you want to summarize or just give us a little brief overview or introduction to chapter 3?
Well, she starts out saying, we shouldn't let other people's behaviors cause us stress. If we do that, we give up our power to other people and we become a prisoner to external forces. And that can be really draining and exhausting. And, that's what causes us to be cranky and moody and not focused. So she asked, why does a long line have to ruin our day? Or why does a slow walker drive us crazy? So I thought we could just talk about some things that maybe cause us stress. And I think this chapter, she's kind of talking about little stressors. The next chapter, we're going to move to bigger life stressors. But I think she's talking about just the little things that get under your skin that, if you're not careful, can just ruin your whole day.
Yeah, she wrote, modern life can feel like death by 1,000 cuts. And I was like, yeah. It really can if you let it get out of control. And I totally laughed about the slow walker thing because that is a thing. And I have to breathe. I literally have to tell myself, take a cleansing breath. It's okay. But I appreciate how tangible and practical this chapter and the next chapter are very easy to read, very easy to take in. And then I know we're going to talk about her personal example for what she pulls from to teach us kind of these life hacks. And so we've all heard that it's not so much what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And so that's really where this chapter comes in. And I just think it's so easy to take in and practical, and we can all relate with her example.
Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit how frustrating a long line is for me. I went to return several things at the mall yesterday. First of all, it's already annoying to have to park, figure out what entrance is closest to the store that you want to end up at, carry all your stuff in. It's the middle of the day on a Tuesday. I'm thinking I am going to breeze in for these returns and breeze back out. One cashier and the line past like the little ropes they have set up in this one store. Meanwhile, I see other people working in the store. Does the cashier look up and call anyone else? No. And I start immediately getting like mad, thinking this is so ridiculous. Like, why, if your line is this long on a Tuesday, then you don't have enough people working. And so I just start getting upset in my mind, and all that to say, that was before I read this chapter, but I really felt convicted when I read the chapter last night. I was like, yeah, I probably should have read that earlier in the month, because then I maybe would have brushed off on the let them. And I am terrible about letting lines get to me. I hate it, like when you go to get gas and you have to wait in line. To me, that is so annoying. Like, it's all lines are annoying to me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, like when you're in that long TJ Maxx line and you see that they have 3 registers open, but there are 15 registers.
Right.
That's what's frustrating, is like that they don't have them all working. That's what makes me mad. It's like, this line is not necessary.
Right.
If they were properly, prepared. Another thing that really gets me is timid drivers. This happens all the time. You pull up to a 4-way stop and there's someone that's already been there. And then they flag for you to go.
Yeah,
that really, really makes me angry. I'm like, follow the rules, people. You were here, go. It gets very confusing. And then everybody's just trying to be nice. And then you don't know what the rules are. Like, that's how wrecks happen. Like, just go. Just go.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And clearly these things are going to continue to happen to us. And so sometimes when I know I'm going to go into a frustrating situation, like the line at the Walmart gas pump here in town is forever. There's no organization to it. Like, nobody knows. You pretty much just like fight to the death, right? Like, you're hoping you're going to get at some point and not get in an accident. And I know when I'm headed there, I'm like, I can feel my anxiety. I'm like, I got to fight for it. I got to fight for the gas pump. I'm like, okay, just chill out. It's going to be chaos when you get there. And I'm talking myself down on the drive there to prepare, because that's not going to change. But I'm like, okay, I've got to go into this ready. Like, the Walmart gas pump is a battle zone. And I need to be prepared for battle and take a breath and not lose my mind.
Right. Another one she talked about, this can be annoying. Well, it can be annoying unless you're the one doing it. So why does the person talking loudly on the phone in public irritate you? Or you'll be in a restaurant and someone just starts playing their YouTube video out loud. Like, get headphones. Like, I don't need, or don't click on those stories. Put your volume off. Like, those things can be very irritating. But if I accidentally do it, or if I'm doing it without thinking about it, I don't think about how irritating that might be to other people.
I don't know. In waiting rooms, there are signs everywhere. No cell phone use. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it can't go off accidentally, but when you just are in a full-on conversation, I've been in doctor's office waiting rooms where the person talks the entire time. I just don't understand that,
Oh, yeah.
That is very annoying. Another thing that really annoys me is when you're on a customer service call and you have to listen to their scripted stuff first.
Oh yeah.
When you've been waiting forever and you finally get there, and then they have to go through their script and they say your name 10 or 15 times.
Oh,
now, Julie, how can I help you today? Or they tell you what they're about to say. Now, Julie, I'm going to help you today. I'm going to do this and this and this. It's like, no, you're not. Just let me tell you my problem. And let's just get it done. Like, I don't want to hear any more of this. And then when you finally are finished, you have to listen to their little script about how they helped you. And
Right. Or I hate it that they ask you to type in like your insurance card number and your date of birth and all that. And then as soon as they get on, they ask you for it. It's like, why did I even bother typing that in?
Same thing at the doctor. They're taking copies of all your information and then you still have to fill it all out.
Right.
I heard a comedian say this, and I actually said this at one of my mom's doctor's appointments. I said, I don't know what you guys do with all this information that we fill out every time we come, but I'd be happy to just keep it at home and save in my file and bring it back to you. Because,
that's funny.
Right.
Like I can keep up with this. I don't know what you guys are doing with it. But.
Right.
Bryce was joking last week. We had to have AT&T come out to fix our internet. And he's on the phone and he's like really trying to underreact to how ridiculous this phone call is going and how ridiculously long it's lasting. And he said, and then you get this recording that's like, please, give us your number just in case we get disconnected. He's like, I'm literally on the phone with the phone company and you're worried you're going to get disconnected with me. There's something really, really broken with this system.
Yeah, that's true. Or do you not have caller ID?
Right.
It's like, it's AT&T. Like, this is your job.
Yeah, true.
You got one job, guys.
And when you can't reach a human, and I learned this from John because for 3 years he sat in bed trying to get in touch with people, about health insurance or disability or whatever. And, it seems like sometimes you just get in those loops where there is no human option. It's just, it's this algorithm and it's this or this and this or this. And you just go down this long line and then you finally get to the end and none of those options were what you wanted.
Right.
And so I would just hear him in the phone going, speak to a human. I need to speak to a human. And he'd get louder and louder and louder. And if you do say that, you actually get to speak to a human, but you just have to keep saying it over and over and over again. So that's just the way I start off every call like that. It's like, I need to speak to a human.
Oh,
and then I get louder and louder.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're getting stressed out.
Yeah, my blood pressure is going up a little right now.
I'm stressed right now.
Yeah. And she said the reason it's hard to manage your stress is that your reaction to what is happening around you is automatic. And you feel your entire body go on edge. Like, I don't think to myself, this line is really long, I'm going to get mad. It's just automatic. I can see the inefficiency here. I see you walking around. Hey, can we get someone else over here at the registers? And you get swept up in the emotion. And the next thing you know, you send the text you regret, or you say something in the heat of the moment that you really don't mean, or you stand there in a really long line of people and the anger and annoyance just builds and builds, even though you wish they wouldn't. And so I think that's what she's really trying to delve deep into this chapter is just our involuntary reaction. It's not even a reaction that we chose or that we have control over. It just wells up in us.
Yeah.
Yeah. She says it's automatic. It's like the first response. And we all feel that. And so what do we do with that?
Before we move on to the next part, I wanted to share one more thing that stresses me out. So they sent out this email from our HOA yesterday. Julie, did you get it on how people are abusing the new green at the front of the neighborhood? Okay. Did it make you upset?
Well, go ahead. Go ahead and say what you're saying.
Well, it made me upset because they tore out all the grass last year because people were always playing on it. We're having concerts on it. It was hard to keep up with the grass. And they put down this AstroTurf. And they did a beautiful job. But the problem is that people are still doing things that they would do on the grass. So they're using their bikes and they're, letting their dogs.
In other words, they're having fun on it.
Yeah, the dogs are pooping on it. And there were some destructive things. Like they had taken the Adirondack chairs that sit around the fire pit and I think vandalized them or broke them or something. There are destructive things, and then there are just things that people are probably going to do, but there's signs that you shouldn't do them. And it kind of made me mad because I, one, do not feel like paying for that a second time because who's going to pay for that? All the homeowners. We're all going to have an increased fee. And two, it made me mad too because I felt like no mom of 5 approved this project because you cannot make people act well. So like it's the same thing at the pickleball court. They put these chairs by some tables and then they put a sign that said, don't move these chairs onto the court. People move them onto the court. That's what they were doing before. That's what they're going to keep on doing. That's the only reason they even really want the chairs there. Don't put something there that you know is not going to be able to be used in the way that people already use it. They're not going to change their behavior. Put chairs that they can move onto the court because that's what they're going to do. And the same thing with the grass. Like they're going to use it. If the AstroTurf is so precious that we can't use it, then don't put it down. I'd rather see muddy grass. But anyways, so I'm upset at the uncontrol that you have over the projects they decide to do. And then I'm upset that the fact that people can't just respect the fact that it is something nice and not destroy things. And so there is absolutely nothing I can do about this situation. Zero. I'm not in charge of picking these things. I'm not in charge of enforcing these things. I have to just pay when the dues go up. But it did cause unnecessary stress for a few minutes reading that email thinking, oh, that is so annoying.
I know, Maria. I actually have this on my list. I didn't know if I was going to say it yet, but HOAs stress me out because when I read that email too, I thought my first thought was, great, I'm going to end up paying for new AstroTurf in some way.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, you can't have total beauty all the time. This isn't a utopia. Like the reason the grass was always worn out was because people enjoyed it. And I would say the majority of the people that are enjoying it are small children. So small children might run their bike over the corner. Even though there's a pathway around it, they might run their bike over the corner, or they might still have their soccer cleats on when they walk over there. Or, like it's just not going to be very enjoyable if it's not hardy enough for that many people. It's great if it's in your own backyard and you can control it. But if it's just to look good, it's going to look really good, but people aren't going to have any fun on it. Even being careful about the lawn chairs and the shoes you wear, like that's a pretty
big ass.
Picky. Yes. For that many people. And it's unmonitored. It's not like you're going to stick a guard out there to monitor it, And so I think that I wrote that too, that when things just don't make sense to me, and then you also have no recourse, no voice. I mean, true, I could probably go to a meeting and voice my opinion, but I don't have a lot of confidence that anybody would care.
Right.
But then the real sticking point is that you both feel like you're going to end up having to pay for it.
Oh, I will.
Oh, right.
Yeah. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Like, if this did not cost you anything, then you could let it go. But because none of that makes sense, you already know you're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah, I haven't lived here 2 years, and I think this is the third increase of, it's like it's gone up every time, and
Yeah, and so people don't want to be responsible. It's the same thing with my kids' car insurance. That's why I'm so happy when they get out on their own. I don't want to be responsible paying for other people's choices. Okay? Then you drive the way you want to drive. But if I'm paying for it, then I've got to control and I've got to monitor and I've got to be responsible for your mistakes. And so that's why I care about the HOA stuff, because I'm going to be the one responsible for it.
Yeah. Right. That's something kids never understand. Like when John would get upset with things, he said, I just always know that it's going to fall on me financially.
Right.
And it sounds like you're just being too picky or too careful or care too much about something that you shouldn't care about. But, when it's all on you financially, you have an interest.
That's right.
Right. So anyways, another stressor, a real life stressor.
It's a very real stress.
Truly.
When you said, Maria, I just wanted to say, when you talked about those reactions being automatic, I really appreciated that she kind of went into the physiology of it all, because there is a science behind it, like the way our bodies are wired and work. Like we have an involuntary nervous system, and it's made up of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And you can remember it like parasympathetic is what promotes relaxation and rest. It slows your heart rate down. And you can think of it as like rest and digest. So a lot of blood flow goes to your gut and away from your muscles. And then the sympathetic is what prepares our body like for fight or flight. So your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes, or your blood flows more into your muscles and away from your gut. So that's why you might get a cramp if you were to eat and then swim, because you're not getting enough blood flow in your gut, because it's all going to your muscles to be able to swim. So like when we encounter a stress, the sympathetic nervous system is engaged, and it kind of puts our body into that fight or flight. It's like survival. And then your body's really only meant to stay in that for just a short period of time to get you through that. And then it's going to reset and return to calm. And so like if we don't learn to manage our stress, we're staying in that chronic state of fight or flight. And you can just imagine that that's not good for your body in a lot of ways. And that's what leads to the exhaustion and crankiness and moodiness and difficulty sleeping and lack of focus that she talks about. So I appreciated that sheet, because all that is true stuff. Well-known, documented stuff that's how your body works.
This is very helpful to know that this response is happening, and it's there for a reason. It's there for our protection. Just like when we talk about hormones and how different hormone fluctuations help us feel, and it's just to be aware so that we can know what's happening inside so we can help direct what happens outside.
Yeah.
I feel like there is no better place to see how involuntarily your body will rise up and feel stressed than to just enter the security line of an airport. First of all, most of the time it's going to be long. And then you're going to have to do things that do not make sense. One airport might say that you don't have to take your Kindle out. The next airport might say that you do. One airport says you have to take your sweatshirt off. The next airport says you don't.
Yeah, well, and unlike the gas line, there is a time crunch. There is a time crunch here.
I know. You actually have to get somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. And so from the security line, and then you get to your gate, and it may or may not be delayed. You might have time to grab something to eat. You might want to grab something to eat, and the line at the place you want to go might be super long. You get on this little tiny plane and sit next to people that you don't want to sit next to, and you're crammed in there, and it's loud, and sometimes they'll give you something to eat and sometimes they won't, and sometimes you can go to the bathroom and sometimes you can't. Like, it's just so stressful, and that's just a given. That's not even if your plane was delayed or you sat on the tarmac for 2 hours. I mean, just there is no way to go and not be stressed.
I think it's a choice, the system is going to be whack. And you just kind of go into it like, all right, I'm managing my emotions, managing my expectations. Do I have expectations? Nope. There are none.
I know. I sat on the tarmac for 5 hours on a flight to London. And it was funny because there was just something that didn't look right with the door of the plane. I know that's a vital part of the plane.
You didn't want that.
The pilot, we were told the pilot walks around the plane and he has the right to say, I'm going to fly this plane or I'm not. And he wasn't comfortable. And they had to get engineers and all these people to show up, at 9:00 at night to come look at it. 5 hours, y'all. That is a long time.
Oh, but I was could have almost been home.
Yeah. I just noticed that some of the people that we were flying with, one in particular, just said, why are y'all worried about this? Like, this is, and I said, I'm not worried about it. I'm just stressed. I'm angry. And he was not stressed in the least. He just took it. And I don't know. I just thought that exceeded the normal expectation. Like, I'm not going to have expectations, but
95% of the people have expectations of taking off within a half hour of the time it's supposed to take off.
Yeah. And then when they keep kind of lying to you saying, it'll be a short time. It's,
right.
Within the next hour. And then, and you can't get off and you can't you can't go anywhere,
Yeah. Okay. So there's all that stress, but then she shares a story, Julie, that kind of starts moving into the let me portion.
Yeah. I've actually had this story happen.
Oh.
So she is sitting on a plane and her seat is right in front of a man who is coughing, and he's coughing very loudly. And she says he's not covering his mouth.
Yeah.
And I think she's on a flight to go to a speaking engagement. So she's just very worried that she's going to get sick. She said, I can't afford to get sick. And anger started rising up in her. She's frustrated. She's afraid of getting sick. Then it turns to judging this man and his his manners and how inconsiderate he is. And then she does some things. Do we want to talk about her reactions? What does
Sure.
she do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think at one point she starts by just turning around and staring at him. Like he'll get
Oh, yeah.
the evil eye, he'll get the message. And he doesn't. And I think she then asks him, could you please cover your mouth when you cough?
Uh-huh.
And I think he just kind of stared or nodded and then proceeded to cough the rest of the flight without covering his mouth.
Yeah.
She gave this example to show how she moved through her thinking and using the let them theory to get to her best response. So she said, and I thought this was interesting. I would have never really thought to ask this in this situation. She was like, okay, what can I control? Like I would say, okay, I can't get off this plane. I can't make him stop coughing. But she said, who is responsible for my health? And she said, really me, not him. And so she took some deep breaths and she paused. And just like we talked about, that was kind of her way of flipping the switch from automatic flight or flight to calm. And then she came up, she was like, okay, let him cough. Let me, and I think she covered her mouth with a scarf and she put some headphones on. So she wouldn't have to hear him and then be continually angered,
Right.
So yeah, I don't know that I would have confronted the man. Well, I know I wouldn't.
I'm just
going to
ask you, would either of you guys have turned around and say, will you stop coughing?
In other situations, maybe not on an airplane because
No,
you're in a confined space with a total stranger. You don't know what their mental status is.
True.
No way would I confront on an airplane.
Right.
But you know what I did was I asked the flight attendant if I could be moved.
Oh.
Because I also had the air conditioner dripping water on my head.
Oh,
I was on the window seat and he was sitting on the aisle and his wife was between us. And he was coughing up a lung. I mean, it sounded like he had the worst pneumonia you've ever heard.
Right.
And so there was another seat and she let me move. So I got to look like the water was the reason, but I would have asked anyway, So they, they can work
I'm
with
picturing you in your window seat and the flight attendant has to lean over them to even hear what you're saying. And so do you ever mention the coughing or you only mention the water?
No, and it was the bulkhead seat, so she could actually walk over to me.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, but
Nice.
no, I just mentioned the water, but it was really the cough. Well, it was both of them.
Right. Nothing makes me more stressed than thinking I'm going to get sick. Every time, that is the one thing that can really, really, really stress me out. And even my own children, like when they were young, I remember thinking, one person got the stomach flu. And I'm like, here we go. And I'm already imagine the whole house is in turmoil and then I'm sick and I'm still having to care for people. And so in this situation, I have had to let go of my control over my own health and literally like try to underreact, take that pause. And I love that she said she covered her mouth with her scarf. And I always think, I was like, I have no control over whether my body will get sick or not over this scenario. And so let's not assume that we're going to get sick because that's always my assumption. My assumption is first thing, I'm definitely getting this, and all the ramifications of what that's going to cost me in the future. But I have to tell myself, you don't know if this is going to get you sick. So let's not like force it to make you sick because you're so stressed about it that you do get sick. Because my own stress can cause the sickness. So like take care of yourself.
I thought it was wise that she put the headphones on because then she's not, just kind of stewing over it. If you can't hear it, because like you said, there's really nothing you can do about getting sick, but you can block the sound to where it's not allowing you to just stay in this smoldering state of anger and frustration. One thing I'd like to say is that this is something that John always told me, and it kind of fits this scenario, is anxiety is coming from a feeling of like out of control. So if you could, first of all, recognize that you don't have control, and then not stewing over that and ruminating on that because, like she points out, you don't have any control, so you're just wasting your energy. But I think a second point that she didn't really say is that you're also missing the opportunity to do something that you could do. And I know John always said that to me, like it's you're going to miss some chances to do the right thing because you can't let go of what's being done right now, the wrong thing. You're so focused on that. So I think that played out in her scenario by asking yourself those questions and then the deep breaths and the pause and let them. And then she was able to focus on what she could do.
Well, what are some other places and types of situations that we might feel chronic stress? Because luckily for most of us, we don't travel every week. So the airplane thing might only happen once, twice a year, every couple of years. But there are situations where we do feel chronic stress. And did anything come to your mind?
I mean, in the book, she said, in this next chapter, she was going to address the bigger stresses, the more repetitive that you might face every single day. And most people say they feel stuck in that chronic stress at work. So I'm not working. I can imagine. I know that's true from hearing my husband and my children, But I would imagine that people find themselves in this in family dynamics, relationships, maybe neighbors. I don't know. I would say relationships in general. You could find this.
Yeah, I don't necessarily feel it in a work situation, but I see that in my family members or like my kids that are in college. They'll get in these periods of time where I feel like they're under chronic stress. Their classes are hard. They have a lot of homework. They don't have time to keep up with their grocery shopping. They don't have time to prepare food. They're burning the candle at both ends. They're worried about their future. Like, I think they can go through these periods of chronic stress. And what I would say about that, like, you can almost be experiencing chronic stress through your kids sometimes, especially if you have multiple kids who call and look to you to alleviate some of their chronic stress. And I think this can happen to a lot of moms of teens and young adults because we take on the emotions of other people. Like, you can only be as happy as your least happy kid. So if your unhappy kids are calling you, you feel for them, and your emotional barometer starts to match them when you see their name pop up on their phone, or someone asks you about them, or you're thinking about something they're going through that day. And you're not living their life and you're not talking to them every minute. And so they could already be moving on from the situation, but you're still living in a state of stress, wondering what's happening, wondering what they're going through.
Right. Because you're managing your own stress. You're managing all of those offenses and hurts and, things done against you or said against you or, whatever, and perceived or just, true. And so I think that then when you talk to your kids or your spouse, you care so deeply for them. You love them so deeply that anything that hurts them hurts you. And so we have to manage that. And I appreciate that she talked about like this on-off switch. You feel the switch go on, you feel your hackles rise, you feel you're like, you tense up, you're like, and you can tell like something has hit you. And so then I do appreciate that she talked about, then take a pause. And we've talked about, count to 10 or, there's different strategies in that pause. Take a breath and release the control, any perceived control. You don't have control. You're not in control. And there is a freedom that comes with realizing that over and over and over. And I have to tell myself constantly as I interact with people that I love or don't know that I'm not in control. I can't change anything for them. I can be loving. I can be a good shepherd in their life. Maybe I can try to help lead them to a place of, surrendering that. But I have to let it go. And so this is where, it's a constant managing of emotions to reset and come back to a place of peace. Because I can look back in my own life when I was a young mom. I wish I knew how to reset. I wish I had this strategy under my belt when I was younger. I did not. I lived in a constant state of stress. You can't control all the things that are going to happen to you. And each kid just, it propels itself. It grows. It gets bigger and bigger. They go to school. It gets bigger and bigger. They get older. It gets bigger and bigger. And the problems just get bigger as their little bodies get bigger. And you're like, okay, I cannot survive this way. I literally cannot. I'm not a good person. I'm very unhappy. I'm worn out. I'm gaining weight. I can't sleep. Like, I feel terrible. And so to be able to learn how to manage those things, to pause, to reset, and then to get to a place of surrender. And so my faith comes into play here, which we have talked about. But yes, I can look back at myself and remember a time I lived in stress, and I can look at myself now and know that it's constantly being funneled out. But it is a constant managing of that. You can't just ignore it because it's going to still happen.
Yeah, it's very true. And Marie, until you said this, I didn't read this chapter thinking about it, but when you have adult children, I do tend to carry their stress. And it's not like that I don't want them to tell me things and talk. I do try to temper my reactions in front of them because I don't want them to not tell me. I don't want to overreact to things, but I do carry that. And I had a friend one time say, "They're big people. Don't worry about it. Like they can take care of it. Like that's their problem. Like if I'm worried about something about like their job or their career or whatever." And I just am like, yeah, but they're people I care about a lot. Like I'm not just gonna not be concerned. But I think that, realizing that since I can't control it, the focus should be more on what can I do, praying for them, cheering them on, just how can I help them, which you have to get past that worrying phase first, and just letting that go. And that's a good reminder because I definitely do that. Because you're right, the problems just get bigger and more complicated and more serious, and with more serious consequences, I guess, or a fallout or whatever.
Yeah, I can find like if I think that my kids or my spouse or somebody I love is not, if I see them doing something that I know is not good for them, I can be feeling chronic stress that they're continuing to do that thing that I know is not good for them, and I told them it's not good for them. And I tried to get them to change and not do that anymore. And I yelled at them about it, and I brought them research about it. And I, told them a testimonial about it, and they're still doing it. And then I'll blow up again. And then I'll be like, I wash my hands of this situation. And then I'm privately super stressed about it. And like you take all that stress on, and really I have zero control over them. I can't make one part of their body do one thing that they don't want to do. I can't make them think a certain way. I can't change anything. But I don't know why as a parent, we just, it must be the involuntary. Maybe it's instinctual. I don't know, but it's like
self-preservation.
Yes. I hate it when I see them doing something I don't think is good for them, and they won't listen.
Or just things about like what I struggle with my son, just watching him start a career. That is just or start a business. It's just very hard when it doesn't go as quickly as you want it to. And, and all of that. It's like that, talk about, it's even totally out of his control. A lot of it. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So,
yeah.
It's easy to take on those things.
I have to remember that I was young. And I have to remember that God so graciously and mercifully let me fail and let me hit walls and let me retract and let me wander sometimes. And even, let me live in that stress because I had to get to a point where I had to learn for myself. My mom couldn't have told me how to do it. I wouldn't have listened. I had to learn. And these are things that like we have walked through. And sometimes the struggle for our kids is for their good. It's to help them learn how to live. And we have been through a lot of things and are still going to go through a lot of things because we're still alive on this earth. And we want our kids to have our perspective of middle age when they're young adults. And they don't. They have to get there. They have to learn. And so it's funny. I have a strategy with one of my kids. When he calls, he knows I have stopped telling him what to do. And he calls and he says, I know you're not going to tell me what to do, but can I talk through this with you? I said,
Mhm.
yes. Yes, we
Mhm.
can talk through it. And we
Mhm.
talk about, maybe what the Bible says or what he's been praying about or whatever. And he tells me the situation. And it's funny, I was able to use these 2 chapters in a practical way with him. But he knows when he calls, I have given up on telling him what to do.
Mm.
And I'm like, you are the Lord's child. You are an adult. And I know you're going to do great things.
Mhm.
And I'm going to just take a breath and let it go
Mhm.
because I don't know what's best for you.
It's true.
I am not your Holy Spirit.
And it's like we're wanting to take away the things that formed us. You know what I mean? All
Yes.
those challenges and experiences that formed who we are,
Mhm.
we're practically saying that we just want to take all that away,
We had to struggle to get here. And our
Mhm.
kids are going to have to struggle. And we have to let them struggle.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, in a practical way, how could we apply let them just to the chronic stress that probably a lot of listeners feel with their high school, college, young adult? Like, what do you say to yourself? Let me listen,
Mhm.
let me
Let me pray.
support, let me pray.
Yeah. Breathe, stretch, shut my big old mouth.
Let me, I think, maybe set up some boundaries. I've told my kids, please don't call me at 10:30 at night with a really stressful situation that could wait until tomorrow morning. Like, is there anything I can do about that tonight?
Not an
No.
emergency.
Yeah, and you're laying all that on me right before I go to bed, and I want you to come and tell me. I wanna know about it. And if this is like an emergency and you must tell me. But if it is something where you could say, "You know what? My mom's probably just about ready to fall asleep. Maybe I can wait until tomorrow." Maybe just call me tomorrow about that. Emergencies are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you what I let me do in that situation. I don't answer the phone.
But then I can't go to sleep knowing
And
they
then,
called.
listen, what I do is I'm like, I will text and I'll say, I'm sorry. Are you okay? I'm
Yeah.
in bed.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
are you dying? Like, I will answer the phone if you're dying. Just text me. Can you tell me where you're at? Like on the level of death? And like, is
Right.
this monumental?
Right. Yes. I mean, this can happen even during the day. Like maybe I'll have talked to
Yeah.
one of my daughters a couple times already, and then I'll be playing pickleball and I get off the court and there's 2 missed calls. And I'm like, I already talked to her before. So then I call, oh, I was just walking back to my car. Oh, I was just walking to the library. So I finally just said, if you call me 2 times or even 1 time and I've already talked to you today, could you just send a text, not an emergency? Because I don't know if you were by the side of the road with a flat tire for the last hour or what, but it stresses me out to see 2 missed calls and no explanation.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that
True.
looks urgent.
That is true.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess let me talk about this and explain, some
Right.
ways that we can work on this together. I mean, I just don't know that there is a lot of let me talk to my friend and let them tell me it's okay. You can,
Yeah, decompress somewhere
Yes.
else. Yes.
Mhm.
And I would say stay engaged, but like with things that aren't necessarily about their choices, but about things really beyond their control, like a health issue or
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right.
a work situation. I have learned to not always ask about it
Mm.
because I think that brings up the stress again. It makes them kind of feel like this is what we're always going to talk about when we're together.
Mhm.
We actually learned that at the Mayo Clinic when Andrew was going through that. They were like, "You're really to never ask him again about this." You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
because it kind of just creates that pathway again in their
Mhm.
brain where it's just constantly thinking about it.
Right.
And so that was a hard thing to learn because it's like, how do you show that you care when you're not asking how they're doing?
Mhm.
Right.
But I've learned that they will tell you
Mhm.
when they need to talk about it, and they do.
Right.
They do
Yeah.
talk about it. But it's just to not make it the focal point of every get together, every conversation.
Yeah.
One time I read a Gretchen Rubin book. I don't remember which one this was in, or maybe it was on her podcast, but it's always stuck with me. She said, don't interview for pain. And so many times we can do that with our kids. We know of a situation that's a sore spot or something they've been worried about, and we interview for it. Well, they didn't mention it, so now we bring it up. And, like, I try not to interview for pain. I mean, I'll try to periodically bring something up, but I don't need to be probing to see if they're not talking about it, maybe it's working itself out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much, Marie. And I've learned, like, in my responses, especially with my adult kids, as we've let our kids further out of the nest, this is a natural thing that should happen. Instead of, immediately jumping in with all of the wisdom that we have learned in all of our years through all of our struggles, I ask, so what do you think you're going to do? Or I ask them first, and I try to let them respond first before I put my emotion on them. And I take a breath, because I want them to learn how to figure it out. Like, I always think, like, I may not always be around. I need them to learn to problem solve, literally just problem solve, and to teach them how to let me as they learned how to let them in their own lives. And so it's asking more questions. And I appreciate not interviewing for pain, but maybe looking for a solution while being comforting, while being encouraging, while being kind, but not taking ownership of their problem and their emotion, because you can't. So you kind of hope that you're like, well, how are you handling that? What do you think you're going to do about that?
Yeah.
One of the ongoing stresses she mentioned in this chapter was somebody that she knew was, really, really felt like they were doing a great job at work, hitting all their numbers and just doing all that they were supposed to do and even more. And then just getting overlooked for a promotion, repeatedly, and didn't understand. And she kind of talked about how to move through that. And she was like, let them overlook you, like, ask yourself again, who's responsible for your career? Is it your boss? No, it's you. And not that this would be an easy thing to do. She said, you can go get a new job, or you can start looking for a new job. But what I took away was something that she said was, you're never stuck. Because I've said that recently. I feel very stuck. And she said, you can always leave a job. You can always leave a meeting. You can always leave a conversation. She said, a date at any time. Like, you
Right.
always have options. And she said, once again, stop fixating on your current situation so that you have the energy to focus on what opportunities you do have. And that's something I need to take into account more, that I tend to focus on what I don't have or what's wrong. And there's not a lot of energy left to focus on the opportunities you do have.
Right.
So I thought that was not that that's an easy thing to do, to just go get another job,
Sure.
But she said, it is within your possibilities to do this. And you're the only one that can do it,
Well, I appreciated that she broke down. It's not even just get another job. Like, I think sometimes we throw that out, but then she broke down all that you have to do that might seem like big hurdles to people. Update your resume, put it out there, apply for jobs, interview multiple times, consider whether or not you'd be willing to move. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. And I think that we can get stuck on any one of those rungs. So, like, we know it's possible to get another job, but it'd just be so much easier if you just be recognized for the work that you're doing at your current job. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like just even the rungs of making a change can all feel like mini hurdles.
Right.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
And she said it takes time. That could take 6 months. That's not a quick fix. And there's always in my mind, there's always the devil that you do know is better than the one you don't. Like, you could get a job that was worse. Like, maybe you should just make the best out of this one. There's a lot of things to consider. And something else she said later in the chapter was choosing the right response. Like, when you don't know what the right response is, like, you have many options, and that each time it could be different. Like, depending on where you are in life and your situation and your energy level that day. Like, she was at a park where they were considering not letting animals come to the park anymore because people weren't picking up the dog poop. you know? And so she was confronted with an opportunity to, do I confront this woman who I saw, just ignore the sign, or do I pick it up myself? Or do I go find the park ranger and report him? Or do I, like any of those would be appropriate, and it could be different on different days.
Right. She had some questions that I thought is a pretty good litmus test for you to be able to clearly think about how you want to respond. And so, especially with an ongoing situation like work or your home life or a situation that you're facing constantly, thinking about your response, you ask yourself, is this going to bother me in an hour? Maybe just let that go. Okay. Will it bother me in a week or a year? And if it's going to still be on your mind in an hour or a week or a year, like you're going to have to actually think about what to do. You're going to have to come up with a response. And so you might feel exhausted thinking, I'm stuck in this regurgitating situation that's not changing. There are well-worn pathways that have been made that I seem to be always responding the same way, and I don't even like myself for how I'm responding. So what is one thing that I could do to change the narrative? And then it's almost like slowing down that wheel and charting and going a different direction, and then trying to create that new neural pathway. And trying to just do one thing at a time. What can I do? What can I do? Because sometimes I was talking to one of my kids about this, I'd said, be the person that you would be proud of. Like make choices not based on reacting to the situation that's going to continue to be frustrating. And you're still frustrated because you're expecting it to be different. It's not changing. Know that it's not changing. So what can you do? And how can you be the person you would be proud of and do something? Like what's one thing you could do? And I think that is the key. Like telling yourself it's one thing, or you're not climbing a mountain yet. All right. Just take one step in a different direction.
I had a Bible study leader probably over 30 years ago, and I don't remember a lot she said. I loved her. But the one thing I remember her saying was to ask yourself, is this going to be a big deal to me in a month or 2 weeks? I think that's a really, really good question to ask because, so many times we let things take up way too much space in our mind that just don't matter.
In being able to let them pause, I appreciated that she did mention retelling of stressful situations.
Yes.
Because I think that there's a lot of baggage that can come into the retelling, that if that's what you're focusing on, is you want other people to kind of join you in how wronged you were in that situation, you could tell a person, well, it brings it all up again. You could put it out on Facebook. Well, you're going to get everybody else riled up and tell you, how you were wronged. That doesn't fix anything. And you could really trap yourself in that stressful situation for hours, for days, for weeks, for years, if you constantly keep staying in that retelling of how you were wronged. And so to free your own self, being able to incorporate some of these strategies, I'll say in the little things so that you learn how to do it in the big things when those happen, that's really where the vitality and the life and the pause and the peace can come. And she says it in her book, peace is worth protecting. So you really want to come to a place of peace and rest, sleeping at night, breathing, life, vitality, rest.
Yeah.
So I think that's missing so often because we keep reminding ourselves that we're stressed and somebody wronged us.
I wrote that down too, Mindy, and forgot to say it. But after the airplane incident, she said, had I not gotten that under control and gotten the right response, she said, I probably would have talked about it to all the clients I was meeting that night, friends, my husband, and that even the rehashing can be exhausting. It can kind of put you back into that same feeling.
Right.
Where the heart rate goes up and you're in that same mode. I thought that was interesting.
I thought that was interesting when I read that because I see her point. But remember when we did the personalities and you guys were both internal processors and I'm an external processor, and I find that I will keep ruminating on it in my head until I can verbally process it. I need to tell somebody the frustration. And usually if I can tell someone, I can get to the point of laughing about it or But I understood what she was saying, but for my own personality, I felt like in most cases I do better if I can just verbally say it out loud. That helps me get it out of my mind.
But would that be if you were still frustrated? I assumed it was because she had already worked through it that she didn't need to, like maybe after the fact, you don't need to rehash it. I don't know.
I just like to verbally process everything.
Right.
So I feel like either way, I'd want to talk about it. I'd either want to laugh and talk about how I handled it okay, or I want to talk about how I didn't handle it okay. But either way, I probably want to talk about it.
But I think there's a wisdom in like you kind of know who you can talk to, Marie.
Yeah.
And then can you let it go then? Because then I think it's like that it's very telling then if it follows you in every other interaction that you have that day. Everybody that you come into contact with has to know how wronged you were or
because you're really not over it yet.
Well, and it steals joy. It steals and takes captive the relationships, and nobody wants to hear all your baggage all the time. Like you will lose friends if that is what you're telling all the time, because everyone is wronged all the time. We all have those things that we're dealing with. And so, yes, there's a time and a place, but there's also more to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I would choose someone that I know really well and who also feels comfortable verbally processing things with me. So we can be that sounding board for each other. I wouldn't just pick like the next stranger I come in contact with to unload on.
Right. There's some wisdom
Checker
there.
at the grocery store.
Yeah.
I mean.
Oh, that's funny.
We should help carry one another's burdens.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciated that we got a little bit deeper into the let me, let them. And I'm wondering how much deeper we'll get as we keep on reading the book. But we do have more chapters to get through. So I guess next month we'll be reading this book, a couple more chapters and getting a little deeper. And hopefully this month I will apply more of what we talked about today. Listeners, we'd love to hear from you. If you're reading the book or if you have thoughts on what we talked about today, you can find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast, or you can email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. But before we go, we want to do I'm a Fan. All right, Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
This week, I'm a fan of something very simple that's making me so happy in life. Starbucks has reintroduced writing messages on your cup when you go to order a drink. So when you order a drink and, they put it in a paper cup, like they're starting to put messages on there. I have had 3 different coffees. I don't know when they changed this, but it's been recent. So they used to do this a long time ago.
Okay.
Well, so now it's not that they're writing your order on the cup. They still do the print out of what you've ordered, but they're writing messages or they're drawing pictures. And so this has changed for all of Starbucks because I've been to multiple states and multiple places. I've had flowers drawn on my cup. I've had "We appreciate you" drawn on my cup. I've had "Have an awesome day" drawn on my cup. It is such a simple pleasure, kindness, joy that they have incorporated. And I'm so happy about it. So way to go, Starbucks. You get a bad rap about a lot of things, but I have noticed, and it brings me joy to get a drink and have a sweet message on there.
That's nice, Mindy.
That's sweet.
A little pick-me-up.
Yeah.
A little happy.
All right, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
All right, I'm a fan of the Flav City. This is a Bobby approved thing. The Flav City all-in-one protein smoothie. I think I've mentioned it before. I had tried the peanut butter chocolate, and then I bought the strawberry. And now I have the butter coffee one.
Oh, that sounds good.
And it is so good. So it does have a little caffeine in it. I guess it would be like a coffee substitute in the morning, but it is really, really good. And so it has, it's not a protein powder. It's a smoothie mix, but it does have 20 grams of protein in it.
Okay.
So, it's really tasty.
That sounds good. Butter coffee. Yeah. I feel like I would like that in an ice cream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm a fan of this YouTube channel that I've been watching, and I never watch YouTube, but I heard this mentioned on a podcast. Homeworthy. Have you ever watched any of their home tours? Oh my goodness, they're just amazing. So their kind of like tagline is every home has a story, and Homeworthy is devoted to the people who design and decorate extraordinary homes across America and around the world. And so just in the last few days, I watched 2 different Nashville home tours, and I loved the juxtaposition of these 2 home tours. One was clearly they could afford whatever they want, just order from whatever designer you want, whatever. And then the next one was this little 900 square foot bungalow with all thrifted finds. And that was adorable. Then I watched somebody who bought an apartment in Paris, and they really live in the United States, but they go over there as part of their business. So then she shows you how she decorated it. And that was super interesting. And right now I'm watching one about, it's like a 400-year-old farmhouse in Pennsylvania, and they are only the 4th owners in 400 years.
What?
And so that's really cool. Like they have tons of home tours. You can pick on the ones that you want to watch, but you know how sometimes on Instagram you'll get like this brief reel and it's so fast that you can't really see what was in the room? I mean, these are like a home tour that you might sit down and watch like while you're eating dinner by yourself. Like could be like 45 minutes. And they go through each room and they tell you why they picked things and why it's special to them. And I just love it. It's like,
ooh,
I'd like that.
It sounds like
It's like an addiction for women.
What's it called again?
Homeworthy.
Homeworthy.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
So, yeah, it's on
Okay.
YouTube, and I've been many places this week.
Wow, you world traveler. That's so fun.
You can't find anything to watch on TV. You can watch Homeworthy.
Oh.
I do forget about YouTube
Yeah.
as an option. Yeah.
And most smart TVs have it. Like you could actually watch it on your TV too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Or if I'm in a long line, I can just, if I paused my home tour, I can just start watching where I left off while I wait in that line.
There you go. Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys, I enjoyed talking about these chapters of Let Them with you, and I look forward to next month.
Oh, me
Yeah.
too.
It's good.
All right, we'll talk to you next week.
All right.
Sounds
bye.
great.
All right, bye. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.